Gareth, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you and I have spent years now talking about having multiple passions and being hummingbirds, and the fact that you and I are different species. And that's what I'd like to explore a bit today. I mean, I've shared a lot about who I am as a person with multiple passions, and I've talked a little bit about you in other environments, but I'd like to hear it in your words. So the first time I talked to you about this whole concept, what resonated with you?
Change was a big one. The need for change, the passion for it, the desire for it, the variety in life that is so important. The patterns that emerged as well as we started talking.
So tell me a bit more about that.
So when I reflected on my need for change, certain patterns kept coming to the fore. And one for me in particular is travel.
Okay.
So the need for change, in that a change of environment, change of experience, change of location. Mm-hmm. And yet a pattern that there's a cadence to how often I need to make that change.
Okay.
So there's a difference between regular trips and long weekends away and whatever, which are kind of part of it. Certainly as part of being a hummingbird, I see that as certainly part of me anyway, and of us. But for me, it's some of the broader trips as well, the longer trips that I've taken. We've taken a year out to travel. And that's been fundamentally important to me as well, taking a break from a career and giving myself the opportunity to travel and explore, meet new people, and find out more about different parts of the world and different cultures than otherwise I would have done.
So you're talking about patterns differently here than I do when it comes to the underlying patterns that are our drivers, right? This is more around, there's almost a timing pattern to that, isn't there?
Yeah, very much so. I find myself after a certain period increasingly aware that I need to make a change. I'm ready for a change. And often travel and the desire to travel is either the catalyst or the action I take.
Okay. So that's one of the ways we're different, right? Is our forevers, so my forever is 2 years. And what we've discovered with that is it's pretty much 2 years professionally, 2 years socially, 2 years with any kind of interests I might have, whereas yours is different, right? So what would your forever be, roughly?
It's an interesting one. 5 years seems a long time ahead. If someone was to say, where are you going to be in 5 years? I can't get to that point. I have some ideas and maybe some broad concepts, but I couldn't be specific about it. So it's somewhere between 2 and 5, I would suggest. And typically when I reflect back on career changes I've made, that seems to be borne out. That's kind of my cadence. Interestingly, though, and particularly if I reflect on careers, I've often reached a point where I was ready to make the change and needed to make a change.
Yeah.
And then there was something in my career that changed significantly, a part of my role that evolved into a completely new and unexpected area, which gave me the nourishment, if you will, to go on for longer. So it was perhaps longer than my forever.
Yeah.
But there was a particular reason for that.
Yeah. So, and I know that I've done that myself, is I think sometimes, and one of the biggest learnings for me as I was progressing through all of this around change was, we get caught up, right, and need to have change, need to have variety. And sometimes, certainly in my early years, I used to make change because I had that need. And so I'd just push this big red button, change everything. And after doing that a number of times and realizing that as I'd done that, I'd thrown the baby out with the bathwater. I've learned that actually when I'm getting that feeling, and I get that kind of itchy, I start feeling restless. I find sometimes I'm struggling to care about, let's say, going to work or going to a social event, or, if I'm particularly, say, involved in a community group or something like that, I just find myself going, can I be bothered? And then, like you're saying, suddenly something really new and innovative or challenging or a big complex issue arises, or an opportunity gets offered to you where there's these big, what look like really big problems and complex fun from our perspective, challenges to deal with, and I'm suddenly re-engaged in a way. And the other thing I found, though, is sometimes when that doesn't happen, actually, it isn't necessarily about changing everything. It can be about changing a thing. And sometimes what I've done when, so for instance, one of the other things that I've had to learn is if I've got an end goal, right, like I'm wanting to get over here, that's where I want to go. And I've been really excited and had lots of engagement, and I've got to here, but there's still that to go to actually get to the goal. What I used to do back in the day is go, meh, and I'd just walk away. And what I've learned is almost always to truly, really deeply get to that thing. There are always going to be periods I have to push through. And so what I've learned to do there is to find something new. And it might just be saying, you know what, I need to listen to different types of music in my everyday. So I'm getting a range of variety in my life that I haven't already had, to bring that change in variety. So I've got something different in my life while I push through to get to that big goal.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about because I also, one of the reasons I think one of the reasons we're different species of hummingbirds, right? The time thing is one of them. The other one, though, is our underlying patterns. So mine are people and change. What would you say yours are?
Competition and competitiveness is definitely one. I like the spirit of competition. I like a target, and I am motivated to exceed it. That's very much something for me, and that's definitely been an underlying pattern. Reflecting recently, actually, I think bringing a sense of order, and I haven't explored it in great detail, but I think that's an underlying pattern as well. Everything I've done has sort of brought a sense of order and cohesion, whether that's been in accounts that I've looked after in a particular career, whether it's in my current career, consolidating websites into a better experience for customers. That's definitely part of it as well. There's definitely the end goal of the ultimate objective for the business, but within that, there's certainly a sense of bringing order.
Okay. And is that really about, so I would say it's one of our secret passions, or not, no, it's not secret passion, secret powers. One of the strengths that we have naturally and inherently, right? So it's, and what I mean by that is we don't have to work at this. It just comes naturally to us. Yeah. It's easy for us. And yet often because of that, we, people with multiple passions, undervalue it because it's easy. We haven't had to work for it. So therefore, and surely, and often people do this when something's easy for them, they assume everyone can do it, which is why they undervalue it. And actually they can't, right? And so there's an element within that pattern you just described that I would say almost everybody who's a person with multiple passions has, which is we see complex, messy things, and we can look at it and go, hold on a second, actually there's a pattern here, there's something I see, there's this strand here and that strand here and that strand here, and if we brought those together and then we organize them like that, all that messy stuff, that noise goes away. So there's an element to that where you're playing to a natural strength, but you're saying that it's more than that. It's a desire that you have to sort things, just get it sorted.
But picking up on the point about it seems easy, that's I've recently taken on a particular new role in the company. So I'm meeting new people for the first time, new colleagues and stakeholders. And it's become very apparent there that this has not been something they've had exposure to. Okay. So there's a lot of complexity in the business. It's quite fragmented. And they've seen it, I won't say as an insurmountable challenge, that's unfair, but certainly as a very tough challenge they've not been able to work through. And yet myself and my colleagues, this is what we do, and it's been quite interesting how a particular challenge has been framed to us, and yet I can work through a resolution in relatively quick time, at least the strategy for it. The execution might take a little bit longer, and that's where we bring in other teams and we coordinate across them, of course. But understanding the how as well as the why, it's been quite noticeable actually how the coming together of the two companies has made a difference and brought more people into our world to enable us to support them in that way. But yeah, it is more of a desire. It is a need. I find. I kind of feel more fulfilled when I've worked through a complex situation and emerge at the other side. You can see the satisfaction on colleagues and customers' faces or in their behaviours.
Okay.
So that's part of it as well. There's an understanding as to the benefit, an understanding as to how we can get there, but the why is particularly important. That I think is what brings the greatest satisfaction, because you know what the challenge was, you know why you've been brought in, why your expertise has been sought, because you can work through complexity and pull diverse people together into a team. And the ultimate benefits are really worth spending all that time and effort on.
Okay, so awesome. So one of the things I want you to share with our community is, often I hear, right, that there's almost this belief amongst certain people within, whether it's multi-potentialites, hummingbirds, however people might see themselves. I see it quite often, I hear it quite often. I change jobs all the time. I change careers all the time. I study different things. My curriculum vitae, my resume is a mess. I'm going to go and I'm moving into a totally new field. I'm going to have to start at the bottom. So I am never going to be rewarded or valued. And yet I haven't experienced that. I've chosen to do it differently. You've chosen to do it differently. So at the moment, Gareth is a senior leader in a global conglomerate of 25,000 people around the world. He directs 6 teams, right? So he is a very senior person earning a decent income. He is being valued, he's being rewarded. So, however, that didn't just happen, did it? So tell me how you, as a person with multiple passions who needs change and variety in your life, managed to do that. What were choices you made that you think made a difference?
I found as I progressed from one role to another, there was always something in particular that piqued my interest, my excitement, stimulated me. And I learned how to focus on that particular strand. And that was the piece that invariably continued from one role to another. So 2 very different industries, very different careers, but there was a strand that might have followed from one to another. So a particular example, I used to lead a sales and marketing organization. And it was predominantly sales to start with. And marketing became more part of that. And then over time, digital fell under my wing. And I started to get far more excited about the digital piece, which was only a small part of my role at that time than everything else. So I started building my expertise and learning and realized that this is what was getting me excited. So I transitioned from very much a sales role, an account management role, out there meeting large multinational retailers, and transitioned into a digital role where I was directing strategic initiatives related to websites.
And was that with a different organization?
Different organization, completely different industry. I moved from news distribution to home accessories, through to electronics, through to financial services.
So say, for instance, when you were making the switch from, say, the electrical to financial, which is a significant change. How did you sell that? How did you put it? How did you position it when you were going through the recruitment process?
Well, I find hummingbirds often have a diverse range of expertise, skills, and experience. And that in itself is increasingly being valued by employers and recruiters. And I found that the transferable skills are often called, I could identify those regardless of industry.
Yeah.
And the ability to, well, one, for example, is to speak a common language between those who perhaps are more of a marketing bent to those who've got the deep coding language, for example, in my current role. Now, I'm not an expert coder. I don't code at all. And I certainly don't have the expertise with some of my marketing colleagues, but I've got strong knowledge in both, and I'm able to pull the two together. So as a group, we are stronger because I'm able to pull those strands together. I've got that diverse background and expertise in each of the areas, even if it isn't as deep as my colleagues. And typically that kind of skill set, as I said before, is valued across industry. So being able to deliver success against the objectives and work with diverse teams who perhaps have had different agendas in the past, who knows, or who had a challenge communicating or working cohesively or working through quite complex challenges because they knew their bit, but maybe couldn't always relate it to other parts of the organization. That's where I think hummingbirds add a lot of value, because we often have got a diverse background that we can bring.
So there's a couple of things you've said there that I think are worthy of calling out. One is you talked about you got yourself ready in a small way. So you began to start learning about the thing that was beginning to excite and interest you. So you were able to say, okay, I don't have the deep experience in this, but this is what I have been doing, and I'm excited by it, and I'm already learning myself. So you were doing that. So that's a piece where often when I'm listening to people who are struggling in this space, they're not doing that, right? They know they're interested in that thing, but what they want to have happen is I'm listening to them, I'm sitting there going, is this where you're coming from? That they almost want to be able to, without having begun doing the learning themselves, begun doing the experiencing themselves in a smaller way, to be able to say, here's what I've already started doing just because I'm interested. They're almost waiting for someone to give them the opportunity in a job and take that risk on them, if you like. And it's like, well, actually, it's a bit of both, because, and I've done exactly the same, right? When I've changed careers, I've gone, oh, I'm really interested in that. And I start actually studying. I'll go and find a course and I'll start studying that. And then, like you're saying, within my own job, I might see what little bits I might be able to get away with doing to begin seeing how it all works. But then when I'm then positioning myself to go into a new role or a new career, or work with different clients or a different industry, I'm able to do that. So there was that piece. The other bit you talked about there, that again for me is one of our secret powers, and particularly if you're a people person. So not all people who are hummingbirds and multiple passions are naturally people. I am. One of my underlying patterns is people. I love people. People fascinate me. I really enjoy bringing, like you were saying, bringing diverse groups together to get them talking. But even those who are not people, again, they undervalue this skill, this fact that they themselves have multiple perspectives because they've, done all sorts of different things. And through that, they've also made connections in a whole lot of different fields. And so then when there's a problem or a challenge that, as you were saying, sometimes other people might sit there going, this is insurmountable, they're able to go, well, actually, I know someone who knows stuff about that. And also those people do. They've got a bit of a thing about it, and they've got why don't we all just get together and have a chat, right? And there's that bringing those different perspectives, those different strands together, whether it's in an informal or formal way, and being able to and also to be able to facilitate and translate those conversations, because that's sometimes what happens when I get brought in, is that those groups have been brought together, someone's brought them together, right, for whatever reason, but it's like they're talking like this, right, because they're just, then they don't have that translator, that person who's able to say what they're actually trying to say, what they're actually saying. You're both talking about the same thing, right? It's having that, and that's a natural skill, I think, for people with multiple passions. You've honed it to this really, exquisite skill set, but we all have the opportunity to do that as we become more conscious that it's a strength we bring to the table. Okay, and just to round it off, what challenges have you faced because you're a person with multiple passions and weaving them together to have a life you love?
Initially, the challenge was, what career am I going to follow? There was very much a sense of, I went through the academic route. Okay, then, so there's a career and there's a path you're going to follow. We've heard of the ladder or the greasy pole, whatever you want to call it. You find where you're going to go and you climb it. And my first challenge was, well, I never saw myself doing that. So that was an immediate, okay, so how am I going to progress here then? And it took a while because I hadn't got any experience to draw upon. There weren't so many role models, people to talk to. There wasn't a great deal I could draw upon by way of a resource to assist in that way. But then when I started looking around, you realize that people had changed careers. And in fact, in the very first career I took out of university, someone was doing just that.
Okay.
She'd been in a particular role, and I always saw her as the sales. She was head of sales, and of course, this is what she was going to do. Perhaps move to a larger company, maybe expand her organization or a team, but she was a salesperson. And she went off to climb mountains.
As you do. I like her already.
And I learned that when she came back from doing that, she moved into a completely different career. But that in itself was an eye-opener that, oh, so I'm not, there are others like me who do something for a while, take it as far as they wish to, and then change to something else. And that was interesting. And that was the very first catalyst where I started thinking, well, if that's the case, then what else in this organization might interest me? Let's start small. Could I shadow someone? That's something I'm instigating at the moment, actually, is an opportunity for someone who might not necessarily wish to continue in their current role, but the company is large enough that I can invite them to shadow someone else in a completely different area of the business that they've got an interest in, to start building knowledge and expertise that way. And I did that myself, but to a much lesser extent. I started learning more about what others were doing.
That was also self-initiated though, wasn't it?
Yes.
You saying, okay. So there's a piece there around, that for both of us, we have gone, okay, I'm not what I'm doing at the moment. Okay, but I want to do something different. So what can I do about that?
Yeah.
That is a significant thing of, rather than sitting around waiting for someone else to magically land something in your lap, it's going, this is how I rock and roll, right? How do I do something about that? And you said you started small, and now you are in a position to offer that opportunity. And I would say there are more employers out there doing that. It's recognized that actually that's, people nowadays, very few people go into a role straight from university and will be staying within that sphere for the next 50 years. Because I think about Gareth's work now. When he left university, the work he does now wasn't even on the radar. It was not imagined. No organizations had it. So if you'd said to him at university, this is what you're going to do as your career, it didn't exist, right? And that is happening all of the time. The roles, the way we work, all of that kind of stuff is changing. So that's in the professional world. What about challenges? I mean, one of the things we hear from people who have multiple passions, hummingbirds around the world, is the challenge they face with friends and family, and often partners as well, saying to them, what do you mean you're making a change again? Right? What is going on? When are you going to settle down? When are you going to grow up? Right? I've had that one. When are you going to grow up? Have you had to deal with that at all? And how have you done that if you have?
Yes, I have friends who have a very different outlook, and they've specialized in a particular field. And we need those, right? I mean, that's fundamentally important. We need people to specialize as well. And they've had very fulfilling and successful careers in that particular path. But I remember the first time that I made a significant jump from one to the other. I've been doing well, been promoted, pretty good salary. Everything was seemingly moving in a particular direction. And then I decided, no, I'm moving in a completely different one. And there was a degree of surprise and shock. But it comes back to a lot of it to communication and talking and sharing, helping them understand why this was something I needed to do. And sometimes it helped to understand what values they had and to frame it in that way. So little ways that they could understand, and then they could start appreciating it a little bit more. So for some people, financial is a big piece, the remuneration.
Yeah.
So helping them understand that, yes, this is a complete jump from one to another. These are the reasons why I need to do it. Oh, and by the way, it's a salary increase. Suddenly there's a light bulb moment. Oh, I get it. Because that kind of tied into their own.
Yeah. So why they
might have done it.
Yeah.
Now they wouldn't have done it the same way. And changing careers entirely wouldn't have been probably something they'd have done. But they got it from that perspective. So when it happened again, they could see there was a pattern emerging, and this was how I was going to find my own path. Wasn't how they followed theirs, but that was okay. They started to appreciate that we were different.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because when people raise this with me, I mean, I've definitely had situations where I've had family and friends just not get it at all. And I've had, for me, when I look back at my previous relationship and the ingredients that led to that falling to pieces, one of them was my need for variety and change, and just hitting the big red button and changing everything and moving on. And my ex was a very differently wired person, so at the time I wasn't really understanding that. With hindsight and also my professional development in these spaces, I've looked back and gone, oh, and now I would handle that very differently. But that piece around being able to communicate, but also for me, one of the things I really admire in the way you do that when you're communicating with friends and family who are very different from you is not only do you find, like you're saying, that value piece around how to communicate so they'll understand it, you position it such a way that it's not threatening to them, but you're also not apologizing for who you are.
No.
Right. And again, sometimes when I hear this, and I remember myself when I was a lot younger and these situations would come up, I'd feel like I was justifying myself. I'd have to excuse myself. I'd have to give the reasons why, and actually just stop it. Right. Truly valuing ourselves when we're absolutely, this is who I am, and it's how I'm wired, and it's what brings me joy and me happiness.
Yeah.
When you come from that place and you're like, well, this is how it is, and you're communicating it, and like you said, you find a little piece that they can understand, that they can resonate with. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, right? It could be just one small thing with, okay, that makes sense. And there are also people, when I look back on my life, where I've gone, you know what? It doesn't matter how I term this, what I say, you are not going to get it. No. And so I'm just going to say, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And you can do you, and I'm going to do me. And sometimes what that has led to is the parting of ways, right? And which is painful and can be hurtful, but at the same time, it can also be, it opens up opportunity for new people to come in who resonate with who you are now, right? Yeah. So thank you very much. Are there any final tips that you would like to give people with multiple passions about how to be successful, how to, on their own terms, and how to weave their multiple passions into a life they love? You could love it too.
I could love it too.
Really, we'd like them to love it.
That would be ideal, wouldn't it? I would say proactivity is the word that springs to mind for me. I find myself feeling better about the changes I'm making and the ambitions that I'm seeking to achieve and fulfill when I'm doing something about it. Where I've been unhappy is where I've felt the need to change. This isn't right. I need to change and do something fresh and new that I am going to be excited by, but not doing anything about it. So to the point you made earlier about waiting for something to happen. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to approach me, or I'm not taking responsibility for my own career. And I have always felt better, and the results have always been stronger when I've been proactive. Haven't always worked. I am not pretending to say everything has worked first time or even second time. But even if it didn't succeed, I felt better about myself and about what was happening because I was doing something and I was trying things to make it work. And ultimately, I think having that self-confidence and believing in ourselves and that we have got so much to offer and that we are increasingly being valued, that in itself will stand everyone in good stead.
Yeah. So my thing is, we are the people the world is looking for. Thank you very much, Gareth. And it was always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much.